Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of a series of Beatles videos that I'm going to be doing over the next few months. Now I'm going to be doing one video showing each copy of every album I have, and today I'm starting with Please Please Me. So just before I start, I want to wish everyone a Happy New Year, because I speak to you from New Year's Day, 1st of January 2016, so Happy New Year everyone. Okay, so I'm just going to dive straight in. We'll start off with the monos. Here we have a first mono pressing with the photo credit underneath the S, and this is the gold label. This is the version with the Dick James credits for I Saw Her Standing There, Misery, Do You Want to Know Secret, and There's a Place. And yes, side 2. Really pleased to have one of these. Okay, next up is a slightly different version of the gold label, which I recently got. I'll show you the difference. This one isn't in quite as good a condition as my last one. Now this copy has Northern Songs credits just there, for I Saw Her Standing There in Misery. However, on side 2, you'll notice that there are Dick James credits for the songs Do You Want to Know a Secret and There's a Place. Now this means that this is a crossover pressing, because the first versions of the gold label had Dick James credits for all 4 of those songs, and the second pressing of the gold label had Northern Songs credits for those 4 songs. But this one is kind of got one of each label, you know, so it's a mixture of the two. Now this next copy is a third pressing, and this is the first on the yellow and black Parlophone label. Oh, and by the way, up to this point all the sleeves have been Ernest J. Day & Co. sleeves, which were the original makers of the sleeve for the Beatles albums. Now here's the label. From the yellow black. Before the Sold in the UK text was introduced and before Recording first published, take note of the 33 1/3 that lies just there, because that's going to change very shortly. And also, if you can see, this copy has a ZT tax code on side 2, which shows it's quite an early version of the yellow and black label, because that's quite an early tax code for a Beatles album. Now this next copy, there's 2 different things that people call it. Some people call it a variation on the 3rd press, others just call it a 4th press. I've just called it a variation on the 3rd press, but it really makes no difference. Now at this point the photo credits, I know you can't really see in this copy because it's quite damaged, but the photo credits still lies beneath the S in Songs on the front cover. Now here's the label. It's very similar to the last one I've shown you, however there's no 33 1/3 next to the XEX.421 bit. Now the bit with the 33 1/3 is much less common than these ones, so they're harder to find. Now this is another copy of exactly the same thing I've just shown you. In fact, it's actually a slightly better copy. Cover's in better condition, still an early cover, and the record's the same pressing as the last one there. So there's that one. We now move on to the 4th pressing, or the 5th pressing as some people call it. Now this is the most common pressing of Please Please Me mono, and I'll show you the label for this one. In my text sleeve. Now here it has the Recording first published text introduced, but no Sold in the UK text across the top. So yeah, so this is the mono copies of Please Please Me, which are probably the most common, I would say. These copies were kind of sort of in the summer of 1963, towards the end of 1963, when the Beatles were kind of at their highest level of popularity. So the sales were really going through the roof at this point, which is probably why you see most of this press. Now I do have many copies of this press, same label, so I'll just quickly fly through them. So that's 2 of those so far. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 copies of that pressing. And there they all are. So yeah, like I said, that's quite an easy pressing to get, hence the large number of copies of that one. So now on to the Decca contract pressing, which was also 1963. As we can now see, the photo credit is now beneath the G rather than the S. That's the same for actually the 4th pressing covers as well, which I didn't actually show. So that's what the covers are like now. This copy's a little bit damaged, but it's for the pressing that I've got. And here's the record. Now it's easy to tell if you've got a Decca Records contract pressing, because the Decca pressing has the very noticeable groove in the label there, see? So, there you go. Interesting to see that on a Parlophone label. Okay, so we're now moving on to the 6th pressing. If you look at the mono, it's gotten a lot smaller than on the previous albums where it's been a large mono. You can also get a mid-sized mono, which is a bit bigger than this but a bit smaller than the other mono, but that's extremely hard to get. And the covers are now made by Gowden Lofthouse Limited. And here is the label. So the Recording First Published bit at the side has just turned into P 1963, and it's got the Sold in the UK text across the top there as well. So that's quite a big label change there. And here is another copy of the same thing. Small mono at the top. And there's the same label as the previous one. Now this next record is a variation B of the 6th pressing. So this is going to be slightly different. The cover's still exactly the same, but the record will have a difference. And that difference is very minor. All that's changed is that the 1963 bit there has been moved to the right slightly, so that's not quite in line with the XEX.421 bit in the brackets there. And believe it or not, this is quite a hard variation to find. It took me quite a while to get this one, so I was pleased when I could finally find one. And this is the variation C of the 6th pressing. Now the difference on this one's quite a lot easier to see. And here it is. This label has an entirely different font to the previous 2 labels. It's a taller, thinner font, and this is the Times New Roman font, and the other font is the sans serif font. So there's going to be a few different font changes in the evolution of these Beatles albums. Now this is the 7th pressing, which is also quite hard to get. Still got the small mono on the top. And this pressing was actually only around for 3 months or so in the summer of 1969. So this is a full 6 years after the Beatles first released this album. Now this difference is quite easy to see. We're back with the sans serif font. However, the Sold in the UK text has been removed, and the 1963 is still there. But yeah, so basically there's just no Sold in the UK text on this copy. We've seen the end of that now by 1969. Now there is another mono pressing that comes after that, which is the 8th pressing, and that's on the one box EMI label. However, that's extremely difficult to get, and I haven't been able to get one of those yet. So I'm going to have to go straight on to the 9th pressing, which was made from 1981 to 1982. That's got the big mono. It's trying to replicate the old sleeves. Now this copy doesn't have any flip backs because it's an 80s press, and the covers are still made by Goward and Lofthouse at this point. And these 80s pressings are quite difficult to get. They aren't that bad, but they are fairly difficult to get. And here's the label. Now it's surprisingly similar to the 1969 press, and that's got no sold in the UK. However, the difference is it's got mono actually written above the parlophone in the yellow there, which wasn't there on any of the 60s issues. Right, we've almost reached the end of the monos, but we've got a few more albums to see. So this is the 10th pressing, which was made from 1987 and kind of stopped in the early 90s, about 91. Still with a big mono. And this copy doesn't have any flip backs either, though it does have a barcode on the back. Advertises it for record, cassette and CD. And here's the record label for this one. It's on the 2-box EMI now, so obviously this is totally different. Got mono written there as well. So this was the last mono press really before the 2014 vinyl remasters, which we have now and that came out in the box set. It's quite confusing really with the mono records, because even though Parlophone wasn't using the yellow and black Parlophone label by 1981, they just kind of briefly reintroduced it for the Beatles albums. So before that, obviously, it was just 2 boxes. But like for the mono albums, they had the Parlophone labels for some reason. So yeah, don't know why. And anyway, this is another variation on the 10th pressing. However, the only difference with this one is that there's an Apple logo at the bottom of the sleeve. Still barcode and everything. Whereas I'll just quickly show you on the last one, there is no Apple at the bottom of the sleeve. The label is exactly the same. And this is a 2003 mono pressing. Now this was pressed in Holland actually for sale in England. It was like in the Harlem factories, I believe it's called. So so yeah, that's what this is. And it's got an apple at the bottom of the sleeve, and that's still the same barcode. The only significant difference with this one, to show you that it's a Holland press, if you like, is that on the 2-box label, as you can see, there's a very clear dish effect there. So that's how you can definitely tell if it was made in Holland or England. Now, I also have a 2014 mono press of Please Please Me, which is in the mono box set, which I have elsewhere. So, okay, so that's all the monos. And now for the stereo Please Please Me's. Now, unfortunately, I haven't got any of the stereo gold labels, which are unbelievably difficult to get. I mean, thousands of pounds is what you're going to have to pay to get one of those, so I don't have that. However, I do have a stereo 4th pressing, large stereo. Now, this is exactly the same as the mono 4th pressing of Please Please Me, except obviously it's stereo, and these are nowhere near as easy to get as the mono versions. But yeah, it's got the recording first published 1963, and it's got no sold in the UK text. And this is another copy of the stereo 4th pressing, which is exactly the same as the last one. There it is in the back. So no difference there. Here is a copy of the stereo 5th pressing. Now, before I show you the label, I just want to show you the top of the sleeve here. This is a mid-size stereo. Now, when I bought this, I just bought it off Discogs. I didn't even know it came with that. I just bought it for the present, so that was a bonus because those are hard to get as well. And the label is very similar to the 4th pressing stereos. However, with this one, not only has it got the recording first published bit at the side, it's also got the sold in the UK text at the top there. And that's a label variation I've never seen on a mono copy of this pressing. And here's the stereo 6 pressing. I've only got one variation of this. There was another one to get. And this has the small stereo. And here's the 6 pressing stereo, exactly the same as the 6 pressing mono sold in the UK text and the P1963 at the side there. This is the stereo 8th pressing variation A. Now this is just the one box EMI pressing. So here's the one box label. Now the difference here is the way the song titles are written. Just look at the side here. See they're all straight, pretty much. They're all perfectly in line with each other. And this is the variation B of the one box. And as you can see, it's no longer aligned with each other. It's all over the place. So we've got a completely different layout of the text there. Okay, so all subsequent pressings of this will be on the 2 box label now. So I'm just going to show you all the different variations there. This is the 9th pressing variation A. The 9th pressing was from 1971 until 1973. And there's no stereo designation at all in the corner of the sleeve. Now, believe it or not, it took me ages to find this variation. And I'll show you what it is. Where the 33 1/3 is, it's pretty much on top of the YEX.94 bits. There's no real space between them. However, on the variation B, there is a big space between them, and also the PCS and the stereo have a space between them as well. Now this is the 10th pressing, and this was made from 1976 to 1980. Now, one thing I should have pointed out on the last pressing actually is that at the start of the perimeter text on the left, it said the Gramophone Company Limited, but here it says EMI Records Limited. Now this is the 11th pressing, which was available from 1980 until 1984. Now this pressing has all rights of the producer at the beginning of the perimeter text, and at the very top of the perimeter text at the 12 o'clock position, it's got unauthorized public performing, broadcasting, copying and hiring. And this is the 12th pressing, which was available from 1984 until 1987. Now there's 2 different versions of the 11th pressing, and there's one which looks like this, and there's another that looks like this, and this is the slightly later version of the 12th pressing. Now as you can see, all the text everywhere is a lot bigger and wider than before. And also the perimeter text has changed again slightly. In the bottom left it's still all right to the producer, don't know how well you can see, and then at the top it's actually changed the order slightly, so that is copying, hiring, renting and public performance, though it's quite hard to see there. Now here is the 2012 stereo remaster. This was actually my first ever Beatles record, this one, so there we go. And here is the record. They've replicated the original Parlophone stereo label on this reissue, which I think is really good. And here is a bootleg copy, as you might be able to see by the incredibly faded cover.